Donald Trump is missing. No, not really. But that's what people are saying. That's the chatter out there. And I'll show you what people are saying. There actually is an interesting underlying point there because he has been missing from public eye, innocent. And then we'll look at what he's been up to. He has been ranting in the place where he rants. And we'll look at that. But you saw reports like this from Newsweek. Donald Trump hits back and claims he's avoiding public eye, referencing stuff like this from the Biden's wins account. Breaking: Donald Trump has not been seen in 10 days. Perhaps it's time for the media to do a wellness check. And then it gets sort of lighthearted. Ed Krasenstein saying medical emergency, responding to Bakari Sellers reporting Donald Trump has not been seen in 10 days, FYI. And the reason he's saying medical emergency is because he's mocking Republicans who said that about Biden when Biden actually nothing. He just had left his plane, but they missed that he already left. So they were thinking that he was still in the plane. And they're like, he's been on the tarmac. He's still in there. It must be a medical emergency. They were just wrong. And they were reporting it as if it were true. And a very strange phenomenon there. Harry Sisson, friend of the show, said Biden has had 18 public appearances in 10 days. Trump has had 0 public appearances in 10 days. Where's Donald? Why is he hiding? Biden's out there working and Trump isn't. Then you have angry staffer saying this is the quietest Trump has ever been. I'm sure it's taking a Herculean effort by his staff to make him shut the F up, but they don't want him to put himself out there and disrupt the sharks circling Biden. So before getting to Trump's rage, I think there's a few interesting points here. First, I think it's fair to say, especially given the current concerns around Biden, especially post-debate, to say if you do compare the current campaigning of either side, Trump is in the public eye less. He is doing less campaigning. Biden's doing more in this current stretch of days. Trump works very hard to golf daily, not so much to further his political interests with this campaign. But I think there's something strategic, as that angry staffer person pointed out. What we're seeing right now, I do think can be accurately described as overboard media coverage. There should have been media coverage about the concerns about is Biden going to drop out, right? All that. I actually think there's a fair underlying reality there that needs to be reported on. So it's not ignore it altogether or ignore the bad debate performance. But when you compare the coverage of this to how many stories get put out in other more very consequential moments about other things, especially Trump related, it actually does seem disproportionate. And it seems like it's a little much. We talked about the New York Times over just a few days post-debate, 192 stories about Biden and cognitive stuff and is he going to drop out? And so report on it, but just, and this is an ongoing struggle for anyone discussing politics or any media reporting. It's hard to know how much is too much, how much is too little, how much emphasis to, because just by choosing how many stories, even if they're completely accurate and factual, you're making a decision about the perception you're going to portray for your viewers, about the urgency and the magnitude of a given issue. So I'm not even assuming ill will, but if you're Trump's side, him sort of going missing, being, which is a funny phrase because it denotes more seriousness, but him just keeping a low profile. He does have some rallies coming up, but mostly trying to not be unscripted, to not cause controversies. I hate to say this because I don't want him to do the correct strategy, but it probably is the correct strategy because right now the media narrative is so negative for Biden that letting that be what people are focusing on is the most harmful thing. Whereas you put Trump out, we know how Trump is. He's going to cause some scandal, some media attention will have to be brought back to him. And the more Americans interface with his face, for lack of a better phrase, they like him less. And so him being out front is not the best thing, but we'll see him get more active. It is just strange given how much it's Biden doesn't have the stamina, how much Trump is chilling out over the last 10 days. So that's if you've been hearing people say, where'd Trump go? Where's Trump? He's hiding. He's gone into hiding. That's what they're referring to. But he has been posting, as he always does, his public therapy. Yikes. He posted in all caps this on Truth Social. Every one of the lawsuits I'm involved with, including the civil scams, were started by crooked Joe Biden and his fascist government for purposes of election interference and trying to damage Sleepy Joe's political opponent. The fake news, including Fox, hates to report that because it doesn't play into their narrative, but the people get it loud and clear. It is this election's form of cheating. They have no shame. But fear not, we will win, and possibly by historic proportions. I'm not going to BS you all by saying there's no chance Trump can win, but I can say if he were to win, it's not going to be by historic proportions, okay? It's not going to be a landslide. Then you have him raging about this, Peter Baker and Susan. Oh, I guess I should fact check. I forget sometimes that as a matter of just sort of an obligation when you're interacting with lies, I should fact check these things, even though all of you have heard them so many times, you know they're lies. But no lawsuits brought by private citizens against Trump. In the case of E. Jean Carroll, or all of his different legal troubles, just no evidence to substantiate that Biden has been coordinating all of this. And when I wish I had it pulled up, but I don't. When I talked to a Trump supporter, as you saw if you watched this video recently from Racine, I went through and said, can you do a little game with me? Say rigged or legitimate about one of Trump's legal troubles, or about a thing. Okay, I'll just list a thing. So the 2016 primary, whenever he would lose, Trump would say rigged. The 2016 popular vote, he won the Electoral College, lost the popular vote. He said the popular vote was rigged. Then the 2020 election, obviously rigged. And then maybe the 2024 election rigged. And then his civil case that found him to be liable for rape in front of a jury of his peers in the civil trial, rigged, according to MAGA. And then the fraud case, liable for fraud in his business practices, rigged, according to them. And then his federal election interference criminal case, rigged. And then his federal classified documents case, criminal case, rigged. And then the conviction on falsification of business records, rigged. And then his Fulton County election interference case, rigged. And then the media, when they do bad stories about him, rigged. And then, okay, I'll stop. But the person went along and did that with me. Rigged. With no moment of pause. The reason I did that is not just to waste our time, sir, would be my message to him. I thought that by saying it so many times, you would go, wait a minute. And we could go even more down in the dirt if you like to. In the dirt? That's not the right phrase. Into the details. In depth. By going the Georgia election, because elections are run by the states, right? So Georgia election that he lost, rigged. And we could go through all those. And then the recount after rigged. And then the investigation by Trump's campaign that also found there's no widespread fraud. Somehow that's rigged. And then the right-wing cyber ninjas that investigated in Fulton, or not Fulton County, but Maricopa County, rigged. You could just go, and it's believed. But then, why, if we're so good at rigging everything, why wouldn't we rig other stuff? You know what I mean? Like, whenever Democrats lose in certain elections, the other elections that will lose, in the midterms, we don't have the House of Representatives. That would have been great. Biden could have gotten more done if we had the House of Representatives. But that's where the rigging power stops, somehow. But the Trump supporter was perfectly fine. Rigged, not having any introspection. Then Trump posted, Peter Baker and Susan Glasner, the fake Obama-loving journalists who have no talent and refuse to write the truth, are failing badly, along with the New York Times. This lovely couple is a one-sided, confused, and highly conflicted mess. Baker writes so inaccurately about me that he's lost all credibility, along with the failing New York Times, which at some point will be put to rest in the graveyard of bad and inaccurate journalism. They have called me wrong from day one, even having to apologize to the readers for their fake reporting in 2016. It's going to happen again, but bigger and better than ever before. So lies there too, but his disdain for negative coverage of him goes so far and beyond normal grief that media outlets get for negative coverage of politicians. He has a belief that they shouldn't be allowed to. He said they shouldn't be allowed to do what they do before. We've covered that. He said the government should come down hard on these outlets. And if you say you value the First Amendment and then you see him saying things like they should be punished by the government, again, this is not hyperbole. How did I describe that? Hyperbole is what I meant to say if I misspoke. The government should come down hard on them, and the them in that case was MSNBC. That's the quote. You don't like the First Amendment if you're okay with him saying that. You just don't. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. It's not my fault. It's your fault. No. But seriously, contemplate that. If you find yourself to value the Constitution, but you support the guy who called for the termination of the Constitution. With all that is going on right now in American politics, it feeling like we're on the world's most aggressive, not that fun roller coaster, bumpy, jerking us around. If you appreciate this show in particular and you want to show your support for it and help us continue to grow, you can do so. It's easy, free, simple, just by clicking that subscribe button. If you haven't already, please do so. Thank you so much. Back to the video. And you know what? Why not, for fun? Because I brought that up, let's look at how Vivek Ramaswamy responded to that very contradiction. You say you're for the Constitution, but your guy called for the termination of the Constitution. He says, no, Trump never said anything like that. On screen, you have the exact quote. One of the attacks against Trump is commonly he wouldn't uphold the Constitution. What's your response to that?
My response to that is that's a lot of projection from the people who are making the accusations.
Does it bother you that he called for the termination of the Constitution?
He did not call for the termination of the Constitution.
A massive fraud of this type magnitude allows the termination of all rules, regulations, articles, even though it's found in the Constitution?
Cite for me one time where Donald Trump called for the termination of the Constitution.
I'm reading it to you right now.
He's never called for the termination of the Constitution.
A massive fraud of this type magnitude.
But here's what I believe. I'm going to answer this question before I go to the next interview. Well, what I do believe is there's the...
And then he goes on to do the normal... It's the left who wants to violate the Constitution. But I already covered the full thing, so you can find that in that video. But imagine that. Cite for me when Trump said that. But then he won't pause to let me get out the quote. A massive fraud, the type magnitude allows for termination of rules, regulation, article, even violate the Constitution. Okay? I'm trying to get it out. Gosh. Yeah. You know, oh, this makes me so mad. As we're just completely going where this segment takes us, all right? I didn't pick this segment. This segment chose me, all right? But I try not to look at or obsess over Twitter mentions, right? You tweet something out. We tweeted out this video. It's gotten millions of views. Lots of people are thinking it's good. But, of course, that's going to come with it negative stuff. DMs, violent stuff. And one of the... So I don't go through and scroll. What's that going to do for me, right? That's just going to get me all twisted up inside, and we don't want that. And I accidentally, I'll say maybe, right before bed too, bad call, clicked on that tab and saw someone's response to it, and they said, it was either a comment or a mention, and they said something to the effect of, you're literally lying. Trump wasn't calling for the termination of the Constitution. At that time, he believed there was a massive fraud, and I stopped reading because I started getting upset. But what? No, that's not. We can't both be looking at the same green grass, and you go, no, that's not grass, it's not green. Okay, a massive fraud of this type of magnitude. You're right. He's using that to justify it. How does that make it okay? Allows for the termination of all rules, regulation, articles, even those found in the Constitution, and it's still up on his site, and he still believes the fraud stuff, so everything still stands. How do you justify that in your head? To the person, it was no, but he was saying that the fraud then triggers a situation where you burn the Constitution. But he's not saying we should burn the Constitution. He's saying that it would be justified to make him president again. I don't know. Trump also posted, why does Fox News keep putting all of these warped Biden apologists on, one after another, like failed former Congressman Patrick Murphy? And then he was more upset than that. Fox News, stop putting on the enemy. If you disagree with Trump, you shouldn't be allowed to speak publicly on platforms that he believes to be his allies. That's what he thinks. For all of the fear-mongering about left-wing censorship, and there's left-wing unjustified censorship cases you could find of that. And by censorship, I mean people being booted from a particular group or a platform or whatever. And you could find examples of that being wrong. But Trump loves the idea of being able to censor people he doesn't like. He's saying, don't put on the enemy. Don't put on people who disagree with me. Even when it's a panel, for example, Jessica Tarlov, when she's on the 5, of 4 people screaming at one person who's liberal. Still, that's too much liberal. Let me know what you thought of that in the comments. As I always say at the end of the segment, and if you've watched this many times, then I plead with you, why have you not joined us on the bonus show after watching this ending part? You can click the join button below to get the bonus show and support the work that we do. It means a lot to me, it means a lot to the team, and we have a lot of fun.